Hello and welcome to my April 29th, 2026. This is video number 3. And in this video, what I want to talk about is soulmates. Soulmates are real, and I would have never, ever believed that until I experienced two experiences, two awakenings I had during which I believed I was in communication with God. Now, the awakenings themselves are a long story for another video. But the first one uh, was initiated by two events that happened in November 2015. So I'm just gonna sit back and tell the story, I guess. But in November 2015, I was going through a very hard time because something had happened that summer that caused me a lot of distress and a lot of depression. And how I dealt with it is that I secluded myself. Now, at the time, I was unemployed. It was such that I didn't have to work. And I secluded myself to my bedroom and I set up my television by my bed. Actually, it was at the head of my bed, so I had to lay backwards. And I started watching survival shows. Specifically, I Shouldn't Be Alive, and I really suggest that you all watch those videos. And I watched every single episode, and you know, also during that time, I was actually making videos for YouTube, which I never posted, but they were about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, because for some reason, I remembered that I had OCD when I was my early teens. So from like 12 to 14. Actually, I still have it. I just ignore it. But I at the time for a lot many years I didn't have it because I healed myself of it. And so I was kind of making videos about that. And I had secluded myself and I literally didn't talk to anybody except for my kids. And it was a dark time. I was very depressed, but I found solace in, is that the right word? I think it is. English is my third language, so I found comfort in watching I Shouldn't Be Alive, in survival stories, and also clarity, right? And so one day I was watching one of those stories, just not thinking about anything except for what I was watching, when all of a sudden, like a switch, I felt a, it was a pulling sensation behind my belly button. Like a switch behind my belly button. All of a sudden it was like somebody squeezed behind my belly button on the inside, and it was just euphoria and desire. And that wasn't even the weird part. The weird part was that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I started to believe in soulmates. And I knew I had a soulmate and he was near. And this lasted like 30 seconds. And I'm telling you, I was curled up into a fetal position and like giggling. And it felt so euphoric, and it was just filled with just this deep desire. And 100% my whole mind was, I have a soulmate and he is near. I have a soulmate and he is near. And then, like a switch, it ended. And I remember laying in bed and thinking, okay, that was weird. What the heck was that? But I'm a very logical, cerebral person, and I I just kind of like dismissed it, to be honest. I was like, okay, whatever that was, okay. I don't know what that was. That was weird. And I just went on watching my show, and just didn't forgot about it actually. And then the next day, the next evening, same thing. I was watching a show, and all of a sudden, like a switch behind my belly button, and I'm curled up, and I'm just like, I can't, the euphoria, the mental and physical euphoria, I can't describe it. It's unearthly. It is so unique. It's nothing like I thought would be possible. I wouldn't think this was possible unless I experienced it. And again, I have a soulmate and he is near. I have a soulmate and he is near. And so this time, when it ended, I was like, well, okay, I have a soulmate. But the thing is I was single at the time. But I went on a dating website, and I had two dates with two guys, and I wasn't actually into either of them. But after this experience, I was like, well, who is it? Who is my soulmate? And so I just kind of picked one guy, and the next day I texted him and made a date. Now at the time I lived well, somewhere in Alberta, and this guy lived about 45 to 50 minutes drive away on the highway. So going 100 kilometers a second, an hour. And so I had made a date. And that weekend, I drove out there and we hung out. Needless to say, um, this is embarrassing, but the next morning around 5 a.m. Oh, okay. First of all, I have to add that this is really important. On my way there, which was this was winter. So I think it was about 9:30, 10 p.m. On my way there, I saw this super bright light just hovering above the city. It was Leduc, okay? But I know there's an airport in Leduc. So I just thought, well, it's an airplane. And but the thing is that I got to his house, and I don't know, it just, the light was so unique because it was just really, it was like really big. And I remember when I was at his house, I looked out and it was still there, hovering. And I remember I was talking to him and I said, "Hey, look at that light. Isn't that weird? Like, don't you think it's like really bright?" And he just kind of looked out and he's like, "Yeah, that's an airplane." I was like, "Well, yeah, of course it is. Duh. What else could it be?" And I forgot all about it. And then, needless to say, the next morning when I woke up and then I went to my car and I'm warming the car and I look out as my windshield is defrosting and that light was still there. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's weird. It must be a helicopter, right? Maybe they're looking for somebody. And then I go on my long drive out. Now, as I merge onto the highway, which goes around Edmonton, this light starts moving. And I thought, well, for sure, that's a helicopter, right? They must be looking for a criminal or somebody. Although there was never a beam of light. It was like a big, bright, shiny star. As if you can take the brightest star in this from the sky and just hover it above the ground. Not even that high up. And then it started, it was in front of me. And I thought, oh, okay, so it's going to Edmonton somewhere. Now I think it's Anthony Henday around Edmonton. And it's been a long time since I lived in that area, but I think it's the Henday. And the light was in front of me. And I just didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was a helicopter, right? And but then as I'm driving and I'm going around out of the Edmonton area, it's still in front of me. And it's like it kept its distance, the same distance in front of me. And then I was like, okay, that's a little bit strange. And so remember, I'm on the highway and I'm going, okay, like 120. And this light is just always ahead of me. And then I left because I lived on an acreage and I left the city and I'm, going out into the boonies and it's still ahead of me. And I just think, okay, like, why is it going the same direction I am? That's weird. And then as I have to take my turn off to my place, it, first of all, I was watching it and then the light seemed to kind of like flip. It just kind of moved. And then as I took my turn off, it was just hovering above my neighbor's field on, out in all the acreages. And it just was still there. Just the light, no beams of light, just a glowing light. And I remember I stopped and I had a Galaxy Notebook phone at the time and it died. And back then, it took so long to charge a phone. And unfortunately, I don't have any pictures or videos of this. But I stopped my vehicle and I just kind of watched it, waiting to see what it would do. But it was just there, hovering. And that is when I excluded the possibility that this could be a helicopter because a light takes a lot of power. And remember, I had seen it from about 9:30 p.m. several hours later. I guess about 7, 8 hours later. And it just made no sense. And I had then concluded that I saw my first UFO. And I was really happy about that. And the next day, I told everybody, I was like, I saw my first UFO, even though it was just a bright light. I guess now at this point, it kind of makes me think of the star that led the three kings to see Jesus. Now, I fervently believe that that was a UFO. What I saw, it literally looked like a star. And so I was really excited. So remember the story that I just told you. First, I felt my soulmate bond. And then that led me on a journey that I saw my first UFO. And then 3 days later, I went to a movie with a friend. And I had what I call my theater experience, which during which I was like the initiating experience of where I received memories that led to my first awakening. So 3 things happened that led to my first awakening, during which I learned that the entire universe is everlasting life. Jesus is everlasting life, except for the earth. One single planet in the entire universe, that being the earth, is not part of everlasting life. But it is due to join everlasting life. It always was. On Judgment Day. Judgment Day is real. It will happen. But it's nothing like from the Bible. It's not a day of apocalypse. It's not a day of doom. It's a happy, happy, happy day. Day of first contact. And so that leads me up to the 4 signs that everything I'm talking about is real and true. 1, lots and lots of UFO sightings, better than mine on my channel as Gareth, like Space Ferrari boat, seashell UFO, flash UFO, and star UFO. Oh, and the most important one, UFO acrobats. UFO acrobats is so, 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 so important. Celestial anomalies, like these already have been happening since like 2017, I believe, with Oumuamua, and then the kilonova, and then we had 3-Eye Atlas as well. We will discover the first planet with life on it, and on Earth it will be using my video UFO acrobats. 4, soul speak, that's what's the trumpet sounds, which is merely sounds of technology produced by the spaceships. And on Earth, there will be a 5th sign. So +1. Because the intelligence virus is very, 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 very prevalent on the Earth. And the intelligence virus is always a lie. Lies are very, very prevalent on the Earth. And the intelligence virus is also slavery. Slavery is very, very prevalent on the Earth. Therefore, God has chosen to awaken all of his children who are like me from everlasting life, who have chosen themselves to be born here for the purpose of the awakening era, to help God, to help as many infant intelligence as possible choose everlasting life. They will awaken and remember their own life stories from everlasting life, just like me. And so I'm not here to prove anything. The proof will be in the awakening era. But because of deepfakes AI and because of the mental illnesses that are happening today, caused by, I believe, their educated mental illnesses, um, people will awaken as well. And so I will make another video about the process of awakening that they will experience. But what I want to talk about in this video is the 3 or 4 physical signs if you are from everlasting life. Now, the important thing is that you must experience the 3 signs or you are not from everlasting life. Or if you are married in everlasting life, you will also experience your soulmate bond, just like I did. That's why I told you about it. And you will know your soulmate bond because, like I said, it's unearthly. It's nothing like you would think is possible. I had to experience it twice, and it is ingrained into my memory. And what that means is that you were married in everlasting life, married by God, and God marries us. And it's a very simple happening in that, for in my example, I eloped with my husband, Lysander, and we were together and we confessed our love for each other and that we were each other's soulmates. And then we decided that we wanted to get married right then and there. And we called Father. Now I kind of have to explain how we communicate with God in everlasting life. We communicate with God in 1 or 2 ways. The first one being face to God's infinite image. So when God chose to be creator and parent, and that is how we are in God's image, God knows us. God designed us. God knows his children so well that God knew that we were going to need to have an image of what God is. And God could have chosen anything. And God is an it. God is not a human being, by the way. And God could have chosen anything, like a light or a tree or anything. And God chose to look like us. So we are in God's image in that we are intelligence. God is intelligence, Father. We are intelligence. And God is in our image in that God chose an image of a person. God chose to look like us. And then God had to choose mother or father. And God chose Father. And then God assumed an image of a person, a male person, to represent itself to us. And this is known as the infinite image of God. That means it has always been the same and it will never change. And this is known as the infinite image of God. And so in everlasting life, we communicate with God in that we merely say out loud, Father, I wish to speak with you. And out of a single point of light, like a tiny little star, space, time rips. And there is like a screen. It's not a physical screen, it's just an image. And in this image is a man, and it's always from the torso up. black long sleeved shirt, and it's always the same face. And then we communicate with God verbally. The second way is soul to God's infinite image. So God does not in any way exist within our universe. In any way. Our universe is a program. Our universe is God's technology. And even though God is part of the formula, and I'll get into that in another video. I know sounds sci-fi or whatever the word is, pseudo sci-fi, but in no shape and form is God part of our universe. Does God take part in the physicality that happens in our universe? It is completely random, and it is completely dependent on evolution and the laws of physics. But God exists outside of our universe within God's dimension. We'll call this the 10th dimension. And but God is part of the formula that what I'm trying to say is that God has to exist in order for our universe to exist. And by the way, God never rests. I know in the Bible it says on the seventh day God rested. No. God never ever rests. Every single moment that is happening because God is always holding our universe together somehow. I don't know how, but I remember this. And God exists in its, because remember, God is not a person, God is not a man, God is an entity. Unlike us, God exists outside of our universe in its own dimension. In this dimension, there's nothing there. There's no time and there's no matter. And the only thing that's there is God and our souls. Our souls exist outside of this universe in God's dimension, the 10th dimension. And God has the power to withdraw our souls from our biology. And sometimes when it is called for, when it is necessary, when we allow it, God can withdraw our souls, and then our soul is soul to God's infinite image. So again, our soul faces God's infinite image. And again, we communicate with God verbally. There's no telepathic connection. And so these are the two ways that we communicate with God. And this is really important because one of the reasons that God chose itself to become creator and parent is because it is infinite intelligence, whereas we are like binary intelligence. God has the ability to have an infinite number of thoughts and think them all at the same time, independently, individually, whereas we're limited to one thought at a time. So this means that the trillions of us can all call Father, say, Father, I wish to speak with you, and have a relationship with God, get to know our intelligence Father. So if that was not possible, then we would never get to know God because there's just too many of us. If God had to speak to one of us, one at a time, it would be impossible. And so one of the reasons that God chose itself to be parent is because it knew that it could parent us and get to know all of us all at the same time, individually. So in everlasting life, God marries us. And me and my husband, Lysander, we called Father. We said, I think I said, Father, I wish to speak with you. And God appeared out of a single point of light. Just a screen appears. And we said, Father, we wish to get married. And he said, okay. And then he said, Askirith, do you wish to take Lysander as your husband for infinity? And I said, I do. And then he asked Lysander the same. And Lysander said, I do. And then Father said, I now pronounce you husband and wife and grant you the wish of soul. I messed this up. I now pronounced you husband and wife and grant you the gift of soulmate bond. And that's it. That's how we get married in everlasting life. And so soulmate bond is how we experience physical passion for each other. But the thing is that you have to think about it, both of you at the same time, and be near physically. So you can't think it long distance, and you have to think it at the same time. So I have two examples where I remember thinking with my husband, saying to my husband, talking about our soulmate bond. I guess three, including my wedding night. Because before that, we had no idea what soulmate bond was. Because in EL, it's not a sex-crazed society. No. You do not experience those kinds of intimate thoughts or feelings, physical feelings, until you get married by God. And remember, Jesus said, husbands and wives make each other very happy in everlasting life. And it makes us very, very happy that this intimate act of love is something that we can only experience together. So there's no, when we join everlasting life or we're born in everlasting life, we do not have the intelligence virus. And like I said, we're not a sex-crazed society. It's not like that at all. You do not experience, parents don't talk to their children. There's nothing being taught to children. So we didn't even know what soulmate bond was until our wedding night. And then we started talking about it on our wedding night and thinking about it. And then I actually have no memories of what happened, the actual physical act of love between me and my husband in everlasting life. I just have the memories of leading up to the thoughts. And it makes us very, very happy. And the thing is that you need to be physically close in order to activate your soulmate bond. Soulmate bond links our souls. It links our souls. And this means that during my 15-year preparation before I was born here on earth in everlasting life, everything was meticulously planned, including the experience of the soulmate bond. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that, during the awakening, that I realized that Lysander was in a spaceship just outside of my window here on the earth, in a cloaked personal spaceship. And me and him planned it. And of course, I gave permission for it to happen as part of my awakening. And I could totally understand what you're thinking right now, how nuts this sounds, but I'm telling you, if I did not experience the 2 times what I then learned was Soulmate Bond, I wouldn't be. I do not enjoy eyes on me. I do not enjoy attention. I'm not one of those people. But it happened, and I'm telling you, it was unearthly. I wouldn't even think it's possible to experience such euphoria. And like I said, it was behind my belly button, and it was like somebody squeezed, but it was just like unearthly euphoria. And so, you know, that would be the plus for the fourth physical sign. If you are from everlasting life and God married you, then you have a spouse in everlasting life. And if you're awakened by your soulmate bond, and I can't wait for people to experience, because it makes you so happy. And so many of us are lonely and we think nobody loves us. But there is a reason why maybe you are unlucky in love. Maybe you are from everlasting life, and maybe you will experience your soulmate bond. And you will know. You will know when you experience this. There's no mistaking. So that means you're married. And your soulmate was in a cloaked spaceship, very, very near to you, right outside of your bedroom window. So that is what I wanted to talk about in this video, is soulmate bond. You will not experience physical thoughts or physical passion until you are married by God and granted the gift of soulmate bond. And soulmate bond makes us very, very happy in everlasting life. It is how we also have our children. And know that we are in the image of God, in that we are creators and parents. God is creator and parent, and we are creators and parents. And it means that, of course, we create tools, aka technology, and God created the universe and is our parent. I was just looking for the place. I talked about that in this. So God does not create your children. You created the soul of your children. We spark into existence brand new souls. And that is how God has new children. Your children are God's children. That is how God has trillions and trillions of children. So your children are truly your children. God does not create anybody, except God created Jesus. And that is how Jesus is God's child. And Jesus is a human being. But know that Jesus does not have a spouse. Jesus does not have a soulmate. Jesus is solo. And I will make a whole separate video about Jesus. Wait, I already did. That was video number 2. So I'm going to end this video here. Again, the video got a little bit longer than I wanted to, but everything seems to be a long story. But I hope you're intrigued and curious. And if you have questions, leave them in the comment. And I hope to see you soon. Peace.